Welcome to another episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about a sexy topic, budgeting. But don't run away yet. We have Sophia, who runs GenYPlanning, and she helps 20 and 30 somethings build their net worth, which I think we can all agree is pretty sexy. She's been quoted on many different publications, including Forbes, Business Insider, AOL, Yahoo, Money Magazine, Fiscal Times, Investment News, and the Huffington Post. On top of that, she was named one of the top financial advisors for millennials by the website Money Under 30. So first off, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So let's just jump right into the questions. I guess the first question I have for you is, what are the most common mistakes you see young people making with money?
It really depends on, where they are financially, but I think that the big things are, and I'm seeing different trends among people in their early 20s versus people in their later 20s. So I would say in your early 20s, I see a lot of issues around financial, like lack of financial education. So a lot of people are getting into credit card debt, getting credit cards without realizing how credit works, how credit cards work, how to, responsibly pay off their credit cards in full every month, and also not understanding how their student loans work. So many people are taking out student loans when they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, and then are saddled with a ton of student loan debt, but maybe didn't really need to take out as many loans in college. And didn't understand the difference between private loans or federal loans. And of federal loans, the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So, sorry about that. So one of the things I'm seeing is just people not understanding those basic things of how money works. Another issue I'm seeing is people aren't saving enough, right? So you get your paycheck and people are paying their monthly bills, but not getting into the habit of saving in your 20s is an issue later on because when you need to pay first month's and last month's rent, when you get an apartment, when you want to save for a down payment on a home, when you want to save for that big trip. And so really establishing good savings habits early on, I think is so important. And then as you get into your 20s and you're starting to land your first job, signing up for your 401k with your first job or starting to set aside something for the future, I think that's really important. And then in terms of financial mistakes that I'm seeing people make in their later 20s, one thing is buying a home before they're ready. I think that there's a lot of millennials that rush into home ownership. I was one of them. I bought a house when I was 21. So,
It's crazy.
yeah, and it was 2005, so like lending was a lot, uh, you know, lead like easier then, right? So more lax at that time. But I'm one of the things that I think that a lot of millennials really value is flexibility and mobility. And so if people are switching jobs a lot faster, people are relocating to take different positions, people are moving home to be closer to family. So because of those things, buying a home may not be the best idea for a millennial, but I think a lot of times they land this good job, then there's a lot of pressure from family, like, okay, now you got a good job, now you got to buy a home because like that was their American dream, right? But that might not necessarily be, the American dream. So those are some of the things that I see come up quite a bit.
Yeah, actually, what you just said, a lot of it resonated with me, but specifically that last bit. Well, I had a pretty good job and I was making a lot of money, and it got to the point where, well, what am I saving for? And the only thing that I possibly could have been saving for that would make sense was a house. That was not something I wanted at all. Higher up on my list was travel and, experiencing the world and doing cool things. So that was part of the reason I wanted to quit my job was, well, wait a minute, I don't want a house right now. I don't want to be stuck in one place. So
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Like that travel was really important to you. That's something that comes up with my clients a lot. Almost all my clients are world travelers. So I'm talking to my clients about things like what are the best credit card rewards for travel? And that's something that a lot of financial planners aren't talking to their clients about because it's not even on their radar. Whereas my clients are coming to me saying, if I can save 500 or $1,000 a year on travel, suddenly like that makes my fees a lot more affordable. That makes them a lot more interested in the other things I can do for them that are more, career coaching, talking about credit card rewards, talking about a plan for their student loans, how to save for the future, those types of things, and not just focused on retirement planning and investing, which, 80% of financial planning has been focused on before.
So let's talk about that next. And as a side note, a lot of the stuff you were talking about that younger 20 somethings have a problem with, credit card debt, etc. I feel like that could be a whole nother separate podcast because, to be honest with you, I don't understand people that get into credit card debt. And I know that there's people listening to this that are in it, but it's one of those things that I feel like people should learn pretty early on. Don't get into debt with credit cards. It's just spending money on spending money, you know?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people don't have any idea like how much money they make every month. So if you don't have any idea how much you make, how can you figure out how much you can spend? So
Hmm.
people are overspending, and once they get into that cycle, it's like, okay, they overspent by $500 this month, but the next month it's another $500. No, they owe $1,000. Pretty soon that snowballs. But it's like if you don't take care, so the average millennial is coming out of college now with around $3,000 or $3,500 worth of credit card debt. Well, it's like if you don't take care of that credit card debt, that $3,500 when you're 23, by the time you're 33, you might have $30,000 worth of credit card debt. Now that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
So I think like what's great about being in your 20s is there's that huge opportunity to deal with those issues when they're relatively small.
Mm.
Because I've seen those things snowball and it really gets people into a serious financial situation, and can snowball out of control very quickly. However, I've also seen a lot of people really take charge of their finances, start working a side hustle, bringing in some extra income because they're young and they can still work their job from college while they're working their full-time job. And they've all of a sudden turned their financial situation around very quickly in, matter of months as opposed to a matter of years. So I think it can work both ways.
Actually, I wasn't going to ask you, but now I think I will, is do you have recommendations? Let's say you come out of college with $3,500 in credit card debt. Do you have a recommendation on how to get rid of that?
Yeah, so I always start by calling the credit card companies and seeing if you can negotiate a lower interest rate on your credit cards. So that's the first step. And then I think the second step is taking a look at your monthly expenses and figuring out what can you currently cut that are ongoing monthly expenses. So is there anything that you can get rid of that you're not currently using, or can you downgrade your membership to different things? So once you can maybe, let's say you can cut like, $200 a month out of your kind of monthly recurring spending. Then the other thing that I recommend is figuring out, what is that side income, or how can you bring in extra income? Can you work overtime? Can you do something on the side? Because I think that if you can earn an extra 500 or $1,000 a month, suddenly that's a significant amount more money that you can put towards getting out of credit card debt. And then I would start by paying off the highest interest rate credit card debt first. So once okay, I cut $200 from expenses, I can trim a couple $100 from my, eating out each month, and then I'm going to earn an extra $500 a month, doing some part-time freelance work or whatnot. Suddenly it's $1,000 a month that you can put towards your credit card debt, and you can be out of credit card debt really quickly. But it really takes just a little bit of organizing and knowing how your credit cards work to be able to do that.
That's a great answer. I guess the next part is once you're out of credit card debt and you've got a nice steady job, what advice do you have for someone in that kind of a situation? Like on how to save money?
So I think it's really important to have at least 1 month of net pay saved for emergencies. So let's say you make $1,500 a paycheck, so that's 3 grand a month. So set $3,000 aside before you aggressively like start paying down your student loans or start, aggressively, saving for other goals. Just because that's enough to like for car repair, pay for a medical bill if it comes up. You have a couple grand in the bank in case things go wrong. So I think it's important to do that. Ideally, you want to have 3 to 6 months of net pay saved for emergencies. But while people are trying to pay off their credit card debt, save for other financial goals, I really do think that just even having a couple $1,000s in the bank is really important. So after that, aside a little bit of money for emergencies. I think it's really important to make sure you get your company match at your employer if they offer one, because if you don't, you're leaving free money on the table. So if you put in 5% to your 401k and your company matches 5%, great, do at least 5%. Some companies, if you put in 6%, they'll put in they'll say like 50% up to 6% of your salary. So basically you do six, they do three. But so you have to do at least six to get the 3% match. So don't sign up for three because then you only get 1.5%. So make sure you're at least taking advantage of the company benefits that are being provided to you because your employer is factoring that into your overall compensation package, whether you are or not. So take advantage of free money,
Hmm.
set aside some money for emergencies, pay off your high interest rate credit card debt, and then start figuring out a plan to either attack your student loans or invest for the future, whether that's in a Roth IRA or whether that's in a brokerage account. Let's say, hey, I know I want to start my own business someday. I don't really know when, but I want to start an investment account so that I have access to the money, but at the same time can really, hopefully earn a little bit more than I would on a savings account. And I think like before you do any of that, I think it's really important to have a conversation with your significant other, or do a journaling exercise of what's really important to you. What do you really value? Whether it's you talking to your significant other or going out with a best friend, but really taking some time to think about what do I want my life to look like? Because once you know that, then you can really build a career around that life. And what I see so often is that people just kind of take the first job that they accept from college, and then they kind of bounce around in their career a little bit, and then pretty soon, they're married, they have a family, and they're like, now I'm stuck in this job that I hate because this isn't the life that I want, but they didn't spend time figuring out and really visioning, doing some visioning exercises and figuring out what is that life that I want? Do I want to, so for me, for example, one of the things that I knew that I was doing is I was living for my 2 weeks of paid vacation.
Hmm.
And I just hated that. Like I wanted to travel more, I wanted to see my friends more. I mean, my friends are scattered across the country and around the world. And I just hated the fact that once a year I would go out of town for 2 weeks and then I'd maybe go to like somebody's wedding for a weekend. And that was like my travel for the year. And so now that I'm running my own business and I'm really, I'm location independent and I'm able to really take, as I like to call them, workcations, so where I can continue working while I'm traveling, that's a really good fit for me. Now, that's not a great fit for everyone, but for me, that really matches my goals and values. And so taking some time to figure that out is really important before so that you know where you're trying to go and what direction you want to go in, and then it makes it easier to save, right? Because you have this vision of like, hey, once my student loans are paid off, I'm going to take a trip around the world and I need to save X number of dollars in order to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And something I'm kind of curious to hear your take on is how do you find out what you really want to do? You talked about journaling. Is there certain questions you ask yourself, or do you just free write?
So couple things. I really like the ideal day exercise where you write down your ideal day. So what time do you wake up? What do you do in your ideal day? Who's with you? What are you wearing? What's the weather like? Where are you? And really like writing out all of this detail. And I would say I did that about 4 years ago. And it's funny because it had little things like I wake up without an alarm, or I have a few client calls, or I write from a coffee shop in the afternoon. And it's so funny to me, some of those little things that are now a part of my life. Like I love working from coffee shops. So I often spend, a couple days a week, just a couple hours in the afternoon working and writing from a coffee shop, whether it's catching up on emails or working on a project or writing a blog post. That's just an environment where I love getting work done.
That's a really interesting thing. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about what is my ideal day like and how close or how far away am I from it?
Right. Yeah, and it's a really cool exercise. So I'm excited. I'm actually going to be doing that again here as part of this course that I just signed up for. So I'm wish I had the first one. Like I wish I would have put like the first visioning, ideal day in somewhere safe. I know it's in a journal somewhere. I have a box of journals. And then another writing exercise for people to do is Julia Cameron in her book The Artist's Way recommends getting up in the morning and doing 3 pages of like freehand writing, and it just kind of gets out all of those ideas that are have been filling your head. And then people really feel like they can have like a fresh start on their day for work because there aren't all those ideas floating around or those to-do lists or those little things or the don't forget this. And that I think is really can be really impactful as well. I do kind of a modified version of that where I do like a 5 minute journal in the morning. But if anybody's curious, check out Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. That's one of the kind of key ideas that a lot of entrepreneurs have picked up from that book.
I actually do about 10 to 15 minutes of journaling too. And you're right, it just gets rid of all the cobwebs. And I find as I'm writing, I realize, oh, yeah, there's this thing that I need to do. And I'll write it down in my little to-do notebook type thing.
Right, exactly. I'm the same way.
So getting back to saving, so let's say you're saving money. Do you recommend someone just saves, other than, Roth IRAs and 401ks and all that kind of stuff, do you recommend they just save in a regular savings account or put the money into stocks? Or how do you make your money work for you, I guess?
That's one of those things where a financial planner can really come in handy is because they can really look at your overall financial situation and say, based on where you're at, here's what I recommend you do because it can get kind of complicated when you're doing a combination of things like paying down debt, building up savings, investing for the future. But in general, what I would say I recommend is to if it's a shorter term goal, like less than 3 years, you think you're going to use the money, I really recommend putting that just in an online high yield savings account. I like Ally Bank, I like Capital One 360. You're going to earn close to 1% on your money. I tend not to like big banks just because of the you don't earn as much interest on your money. You might be earning like 0.1% instead of like 1%. So just like keeping it really simple. And I also think there's something strategic about keeping your savings separate from your at a separate bank than your checking account because suddenly it's not so easy to transfer that money back and forth and you don't see it all you don't see like the total balance all lumped into one. Instead you see it's like at a separate place and it's just a little bit more effort, which means I've noticed that clients don't tap those accounts as easily as if their checking and savings are at the same bank.
Oh, that's an interesting thing. I definitely have my savings and my checking together, and I lump the two together. And yeah, I think if one runs out, the other one takes over. I generally don't have a problem with running out of like money as a whole, but that might be a good idea if I'm trying to save for something specific, putting it in a separate bank.
Yeah, I just think that little bit of separation. I do this with people's travel savings as well. So I make them have a separate emergency savings account from their travel savings account so that they're not robbing their emergency savings to pay for travel. But then they save for each of those goals each month. So they might be saving $300 a month for emergencies and $100 a month for travel, but they can see those balances build.
Okay, that's some. I like that piece of advice. I'm definitely going to start using that. Another thing I want to talk about is one of the articles you wrote. That's one of my favorite articles that you wrote. It was 20 tips to save $200 a month. And two of my favorite things that you said in there was make your credit cards work for you, which I do. All my credit cards are points. I get tons of points and miles and all that kind of fun stuff. And another one you talked about was cooking meals for yourself as opposed to constantly going out to eat, with which I totally agree with, especially if you're going out to eat just because you're too lazy to cook the food yourself, then it doesn't make sense. And we talked about this before the podcast, but it's a different story if you're going out to eat with friends or to make connections. But what are some of your favorite money tips that you can give to people?
So those were a few right there that you had mentioned. I think another one is so I'm really think that it's important to like work out and be healthy and do those types of things. But one of the things I noticed is that a lot of people that are in climates that are, where it's cold in the winter and nice in the summer, they really want to be outside in the summer, whether it's like biking or like hiking, running outside. And so just putting your gym membership on hold for a few months. That's a great way to save a couple $100s or canceling the gym membership 6 months out of the year and just having it for the 6 months that you're going to use it. Um, just making sure that you're using all the subscriptions that you're signed up for. So there's so many people that have like sign up for things because it's just $10 a month here, $20 a month there. We have the Netflix and the Spotify and the Hulu and sometimes sometimes those things are great and you're getting a ton of value out of them. And other times it's like you haven't used that account in months. So let's just cut that. Let's just cut those expenses. So really figuring out, where your money is going every month, I think is really important. Um, and my other tips to save would be, I think, on interest as well. So looking at, how much are you paying in interest on your credit cards or on your car loan or on your mortgage? So refinancing your mortgage, refinancing your car loan, working on improving your credit score so you can do those things, calling your credit card companies and asking for lower interest rates. So a lot of times people don't think of those things as ways to save because they're like fixed monthly bills. Same with insurance. Like if you redo your insurance, if you can get lower car insurance or renter's insurance. Um, but they don't think of those things to address because they're so used to paying that same car payment every month. But their car rate might be at 8% because they got it 3 years ago and their credit wasn't as good, and now maybe their credit's improved a lot and they can get a car loan at 3%, and maybe knock off a year of the loan and keep the payment pretty similar. So different things like that are ways that I really try to help my clients look for ways to maximize their current financial situation.
And as far as keeping track of spending, how do you recommend people do that? Do you use an app like Mint, or is there another type?
So what I recommend is to do what works for you and what you'll actually do.
Mm.
So I think that so much of personal finance is personal. And by that, I mean that I'm not going to recommend an app for you if you're never going to open the app.
Hmm.
But at the same time, if you really like looking at seeing where everything is going and it's categorized and, playing with it and the gamification of it, then get mint.com on your phone and you'll love it. I have like a really simple spreadsheet that I use with my clients where I make them write down their fixed monthly costs in one column and their saving goals in the other column, and then figure out how much do we have for everything else. And by everything else, I mean those variable costs. So gas, groceries, eating out, clothing shopping, drugstore purchases, all those things that really vary throughout the month. I figure out what do we have left for those. So let's say we have $1,000 left after we've paid our bills, after we put money into savings. I divide that number by 4 to figure out your weekly spending amount. So that leaves you with about $250 a week. And then sometimes what I recommend is that people either, switch to cash for a while if they have a problem with credit card debt. Other times I recommend that they set up a separate checking account and that $250 just goes into that account every month and they just use that debit card for those things. And then they know, okay, when it's gone, it's gone. Other times I'll have clients that are, using credit cards for rewards and they're using them responsibly, but then that gives them a number that they know, hey, my credit card balance should be around $1,000 every month because that's what I have for discretionary spending. And then they know like this is what I need to keep that to, as opposed to some months it's 800, some months it's 1500, some months, and not having like a clear handle on what can I spend on those discretionary charges.
All right, that's a lot of great tips there. I want to jump into 401ks, but before we do that, I guess what's the difference between the Roth IRA and the 401k, and do you recommend both or just one?
Such a good question and so important for millennials. So I recommend both, and they are different, and here's how. So they're different because of how they're taxed. I'm sorry. So they're different because of your 401k is tied to your employer, so that's something to know. So you can't go out and open your own 401k. You have to sign up for your employer's 401k plan. If you work for a nonprofit or a school, it's called a 403b plan. Pretty much the same thing, very similar. And you can put away up to $18,000 per year into that account pre-tax. What that means is basically, let's say your income is $50,000 a year, but you put $10,000 into your 401k. You're actually only paying taxes on $40,000 because you get an upfront tax deduction for the money you put into your 401k. Now that money grows, and when you withdraw it in retirement, then you have to pay taxes on that money. So you have to pay taxes as you take that money out of the account, which is why, and that's because you didn't pay taxes when you put the money into the account. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So Roth IRAs work the opposite way. So basically, you get your paycheck, and that's your net pay. So the taxes have already been taken out of that. Then you take that money and you use it to fund a Roth IRA. Now, a Roth IRA is an individual retirement account. That's what, IRA stands for, is individual retirement account, but you're funding it with after tax dollars, which means that because you paid taxes on the money up front, you don't have to pay taxes on the money later on. So you can put up to $5,500 into a Roth IRA each year, but you only get that set amount. So let's say you don't contribute to your Roth IRA in your 20s, but you start one in your 30s. You can't put like $50,000 into it that you missed out on your contributions from the previous years. You can only do $5,500 per year. That's why it's important to do it each year. So then that money grows tax free when you withdraw it in retirement. Since you already pay taxes on the money up front, you don't have to pay any taxes on the money when you take it out. The reason why that's really cool is because if you start funding this account when you're in your 20s, you could have $500,000 or $1 million in your Roth IRA by the time you reach retirement age. And then when you're taking that money out, you're not paying taxes on it. So that gives you a lot of flexibility later on to keep yourself in a lower tax bracket in retirement, because you'll have both 401k money and Roth IRA money, meaning you can fill up the lower tax brackets with the 401k money. And then if you still need additional dollars, you can fill up, it doesn't matter, because that money is, you can take as much as you want out of that 401k, or sorry, out of your Roth IRA and not pay taxes on it.
The Roth
Does that
IRA,
help?
yeah, the Roth IRA, do you invest that money in kind of like a mutual fund like you do with 401ks, or is that different?
So there's a lot more control that you have over the investments in a Roth IRA, because you can open that at any discount brokerage firm, any investment management company. And so you can choose a wide variety of things to invest it in, from mutual funds to individual stocks to index funds, target date funds, bonds, real estate, all sorts of things. So it really offers a lot more flexibility than you would get in your traditional 401k plan. The other thing to note, which is a little rule that a lot of people don't know about, is that you can take out your contributions to your Roth IRA at any time, and there's no penalties and there's no taxes, because you already paid taxes on it.
Mm.
So if you put, let's say, $2,000 a year for the next 5 years into your Roth IRA, that's 10 grand, and now the account's worth 15 grand, you can actually take out your $10,000 worth of contributions and use that money for whatever you want. Um, However, you can't take out the earnings. If you take out that 5,000 in earnings, so if you just cash out the whole account, then you have to pay taxes and fees on the earnings.
Okay.
But I'm telling you this rule because a lot of people are actually using Roth IRAs to fund their kids' college education. So they're maxing out their Roths, and then when it's time for their kids to go to college, they're taking out that money that they put in and using that to help pay for college costs, because it's not factored into the estimated family contribution on the FAFSA. Your readers might be more interested in using that money later on to fund a business. So you could put money into a Roth IRA every year, max it out, and then let's say 5 years from now you decided to launch a business, you could take out some of that money to do so. However, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I think you should think of it as long-term money, but I think that it's good that people know that that's an option, and that's why the Roth is so flexible and offers so many options, which is why I like it so much.
With the Roth IRA, just to be clear, there's no guarantee that it'll, let's say you put the 10,000 in, there's no guarantee that it'll increase over time. It has the potential to go lower, right? Right? Or am I wrong?
Oh yeah, oh
Okay.
yeah, depending on what you invest in.
So be smart with
So
those investments, it sounds like.
yeah, just and two, it's like, really be ready to kind of ride out the market as well. There's going to be times when the market's going up, and there's going to be times when the market's going down, and it's going to be, sometimes people like watch their investments, but it's the best is to just leave it, let it grow and leave it there. And
Warren Buffett style. Just buy it, don't touch
yeah.
it again for a long time.
Right.
So you kind of sold me a little bit more on the Roth IRA, and
Oh, good.
as you know, I'm not a big 401k fan, and for
I
me,
know.
the reason is, when I first started my 401k, I was 20, probably 22, And at that point, I knew I wouldn't be able
Good
to
for
touch
you,
it.
by the way, for starting your Roth IRA or 401k when you were 22.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
I do somewhat regret it right now, because it would be nice to have the money. But I will. So the reason I was against, or I'm kind of against it, I started it at 22, and I realized that I'm not going to be able to touch this money until I'm 65, which is like 3 times the length of the life I've already lived. And the other reason is that money for me as an entrepreneur, and it's totally different if you're just a typical person that's working at a corporate job, but as an entrepreneur, that money is really valuable right now. So tell me, why am I wrong and why are 401ks amazing?
So, so the thing that you should know about 401ks is that if you do have an opportunity to get a match, that's really valuable because, like I said earlier, you're basically like, leaving free money on the table. The other thing, the other thing to note is that I think we don't really know what Social Security is going to look like for our generation. And so I think it's really important that we get into the habit of setting aside some money for the future that we just don't plan on touching for a very long time. And then we just get in that habit of knowing that like we're going to have to, fund our own retirement. You can access the money at age 59 and a half. So I think I should just point that out for your
Yes,
listeners.
so much sooner.
So much sooner. Um, but I also um, I think that it's really important, like I said, to get in that habit of saving, putting aside money for the future, learning how to, you're really taking advantage of long-term market growth, hopefully at least, right? So that we hope that over the long term that your rate of return is going to be 7 or 8% on that money. Um, but I would say that while that's important, it's also important and something that you and I had talked about to invest in yourself. So setting aside some money for the future is important. But what you might find is that, maybe once you get your match on your 401k, maybe a Roth IRA is a better fit because it does offer more flexibility. So maybe you just contribute enough to get your match and then you contribute to a Roth IRA, knowing that you really needed to access the funds you could later on. But the other thing is that, I really think that we're going to be working a lot longer as well. So, right now I know that like your 60s sounds like super old. Um, but there's like a pretty good chance that we'll work until we're like in our 70s because we want to,
Yeah.
because we're going to live till we're 100.
Hmm.
So like retiring at 50 is like, what are we going to do for the other half of our life? So it's important to have money there later on for those healthcare costs that come up. But you might actually, be working a career that you really love and be doing that a lot longer. So just being able to like build that nest egg now, you really have compound interest on your side. So if we look at the rule of 72, which is like if you um, divide it by basically it's how long it takes for your money to double. So if you're earning like 8% on your money, it would take 9 years for your money to double. So if we think about how many times our money could double in our lifetime, that's really significant. So just by, taking some time to set aside, a few $1,000s a year now, and then a few thousand more next year, and just kind of slowly increasing that as our income grows, you really having that money there when we really want it is gonna be really important. I think that gives you a lot of flexibility and options in the future. So even if you don't, you may be a serial entrepreneur. You may start multiple businesses over your lifetime. And so having that nest egg there, knowing that that's growing and that's kind of earmarked for the future, I think is really important. And I think that a lot of people who aren't as who I think a lot of people who aren't as savvy when it comes to their careers, the investments are the place where their money is really worth it to grow long term versus people who feel like investing that money into themselves, they can really, double that money or make that money work for them or increase their earning potential and whatnot. Other people might feel like, look, I know I'm going to be in this job for a long time. I want to make sure that I'm taking advantage of the stock market returns over the long term to be able to grow my net worth so that if something does happen with my job, that I know that, I have emergency savings and I have money set aside for the future. I'm saving while times are good. And I think one of the things that we learned from a lot of the previous generation and our parents was like how important it is to save while times are good. And that's like emergency savings and just like saving for the future. Um, because I do think that, you know, your career is going to be a roller coaster. It just is that way more and more and more. There's going to be some really good years and there's going to be some hard times. And so the more flexibility and options you have, whether that's in an emergency savings, whether that's in a Roth IRA, and maybe you have some money in a brokerage account and investments that you can tap. And maybe you have a lot of different skill sets that you can tap. I think that's becoming more common, different income streams that you're able to build and grow. Those are going to be really important for millennials and, over our lifetime and as we build our careers, as we grow our income over time.
So really quick, I want to go back to something you were talking about, and we talked about before the episode, was
Yes.
investing in yourself. And do you
Yeah.
have any tips for people? Because I feel like that is something that is often overlooked, is that sometimes putting $2,000 towards improving yourself can actually pay dividends. Do you have any tips for how people can invest in themselves?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that sometimes people will cut so many expenses just to, pay off their credit card debt. But then once their credit card debt's paid off, they don't think about like, hey, what could I do to really grow my career or invest in myself so that I could be, earning more money or that I could be, furthering my career. I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about investing in themselves, they're too narrow-minded in terms of they think investing in themselves only means a college
Hmm.
education, right?
Hmm.
So it only means like, well, it's like, well, I need an MBA because like I'm investing in myself. But it's like if they want to be an entrepreneur, getting your MBA not as helpful. If you want to be in middle management, getting an MBA may be more helpful.
Hmm.
So really thinking about what's that life that you want to live, what's that career that you want, what's that job, and like how do we build a career around that life, right? Rather than the opposite. How do we build a business to support your great life? And I think that there's a lot of great online courses now. There's a lot of great, really highly niche courses and training programs out there that you could become an expert in and really provide an amazing service to other businesses, other clients that are looking for somebody who specializes in that skill set. And there's just not a lot of people that have that specific skill set. So I'm actually doing a course right now through. So Jamie Tardy has the podcast Eventual Millionaire, and she has a program called Millionaire Hustler. And it's a 12-week course that I'm doing with a group of people. And I love it. And I love that I can watch the videos when it's convenient for me. It keeps, I have to list my 5 active actions each week. There's, a private Facebook group that helps hold me accountable. There's a weekly check-in call where we all have to say how many of our 5 actions we got done that week. So there's so many more things like that I really feel like that's an investment in myself, and that if that helps me land one more client, then that's worth it.
Hmm.
And I think that so many people don't think like, man, if this course for, a couple hundred or $1,000 helps me um, grow my business or be able to market a different skill set or whatnot, that can really be huge for your growth and for your income potential. And then I also think there's something that comes down to also investing in experiences. So I'm much more likely to invest money on a conference or on travel or a combination of that, right? When I'm going to a conference in a different place. And I often, meet great people, create great memories, eat great food, experience a new culture. And those are things that I remember for a very long time. And I think that that will sometimes you don't know, hey, that person I met here introduced me to this person who led to a new business relationship. And it's kind of funny how those things work out, but they really have an amazing way of working out. So I would say that, one of the things to think about, if that's something that you haven't really been in the habit of investing money into yourself, create create a savings account for like your personal growth fund. And it might be that photography class that you've always wanted to take. It might be that, that conference you've always wanted to register for. It might be putting money into getting all new art supplies that have just been, using the old ones for years. And you want to spend a couple $100 on new art supplies. I just think that there's little things like that that are like investing in yourself, in your craft, in your work that can really bring a lot of joy and happiness into your life and really pay off in the future.
I love that advice. I think I'm going to open a second bank account specifically where I save money to reinvest in myself. So there was a lot of tips and a lot of advice in this episode, but if you had to say just one thing for people in their 20s, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Ooh, um, it's so good. I think that it's going to be invest in your health because as now I'm 31, and as I get into my 30s, I think that there's a clear distinction in that you notice when people are in their 30s between people who take care of themselves and people who don't. And you don't notice it as much in your 20s because everybody's like really busy and going to school and like partying and and then like, it's like the work hard, play hard mentality. But as you start to get into your 30s, I think that you can really tell people that are working hard at taking care of themselves and people who aren't. And I also think that that's a huge, will have huge financial benefits for the rest of your life if you continue to take care of your health and your body and your soul and your mind. And there's going to be a huge detriment to those who don't. So you're looking at a lot of diseases that have to do with the fact that people aren't taking care of themselves. And so I think one of the things that to really think about is, how can you invest in your health, and also because that makes you more productive as well. When Richard Branson was asked like, what's the one thing that people should do to be more productive? He said, work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's very telling. And what I've noticed is people that I really admire, people that I really look up to in terms of what they're doing in their business and in their work and in life, a lot of them, like when I was looking at a group of women that I really admired, I noticed all of them did yoga. And about a year ago, I started doing yoga, and now I love it. And I'm just like, that totally changed my life. And so, whether it's yoga or whether it's, I know friends that are really into CrossFit, or whether it's, running, just figuring out what's your thing that you can do to keep yourself healthy. And, really, putting a little bit of time and energy into that because, um, I worked jobs where I just was working crazy hours. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't working out. And I just burnt out. I literally burnt out. And I think that that's one of the dangers of being in your 20s and young and having a ton of energy is that we can also like run ourselves ragged and like burn the candle at both ends. So I would say invest in your health, take some time for yourself and to take care of yourself. And I think that that'll pay off long term.
I think that's the first time someone has said that when I've asked this question. I completely agree, and that's something that never really popped in my head. Being a 20-something, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be healthy forever, but you're 100% right. That's something I definitely need to focus on. Sophia, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so my website is GenYPlanning.com, and I have a free guide of how you can be better with money than your friends. So check that out. I came out with an ebook called What You Should Have Learned About Money But Never Did, a Gen Y Guide to Empowered Personal Finance, and you can find that on Amazon. And then I love Twitter. So follow me on Twitter. My handle's just at Sophia Bera, SOPHIABERA. And if you do, if you liked this, if you have any thoughts or feedback, shoot me an email. My email is Sophia, SOPHIA at GenYPlanning.com. And I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.